We will go beyond geographical and cultural boundaries to explore how religions influence human lives and how humans in turn shape their spiritual experiences.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, all praise is due to Allah alone, and may peace and blessings be upon the one after whom there is no prophet. We send prayers and peace upon the best of his creation, Muhammad, his family, his companions, and those who follow his path, emulate his way, uphold his sunnah, and are guided by his teachings until the day of judgment. And now, peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be upon you all. May your time be filled with goodness. Dear viewers, we are delighted to have you join us in the final episode of your program, People and Religions. This program has been enriched with diverse topics and themes. In this final episode, we will discuss religions and their impact on civilizational development. Undoubtedly, the role of religion in shaping human civilization is a deeply engaging topic. Throughout history, humanity has witnessed various civilizations, each with its unique characteristics as revealed by archaeological discoveries. Among the most notable civilizations are the Chinese, Egyptian, Babylonian, Roman, Persian, and Islamic civilizations. The Islamic civilization, without a doubt, stands as one of the greatest in human history, distinguished by its immense contributions to science, philosophy, literature, and the arts. It served as a foundational pillar for the European Renaissance, and numerous scholars have compiled encyclopedias and books documenting the invaluable contributions of Islamic civilization to human societies, extending from the borders of China in the east to the Atlantic Ocean in the west. What sets Islamic civilization apart from others is its firm grounding in religious, moral, and doctrinal principles. It successfully realized the objectives for which mankind was created: worship, stewardship, and the development of the earth. Unlike any other civilization, it was uniquely built upon religious foundations. Given this, can we truly speak of a Jewish civilization or a Christian civilization that was established on religious principles? To explore this further, we are honored to have Dr. Alaa Hailat with us. Dr. Alaa, how are you?
May Allah bless you.
We have now reached the last station in this program. We hope, Allah willing, to meet again in many other programs.
Allah willing.
Doctor, of course, we are talking about civilization today. Our episode focuses on civilization, Islamic civilization, and Western civilizations. We would like to discuss what do we mean by civilization and civilizational development.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may peace and blessings be upon the noblest of creation and messengers, our Master Mohammed, peace be upon him, and upon his pure and righteous family and companions. After that, may Allah bless you, Doctor. As you mentioned, we ask Allah Almighty to make this work purely for His sake and to allow it to continue, God willing, with other beneficial topics for our esteemed viewers. Doctor, as many scholars state, civilization is the result of human efforts in building both material and spiritual aspects of life. That is, in constructing material life through means of livelihood, and in shaping spiritual life through lifestyle and culture. Civilization, therefore, is the fruit of human endeavors in progress and development. When we refer to scholars' numerous definitions of civilization, we find that they point to a very important concept that can be derived from these definitions. Civilization is an accumulative and existential advancement in human development, and an accumulative and existential progress in the development of urbanization.
Good.
What does this mean? Cumulative progress refers to continuous advancement, meaning the accumulation of human experiences. Humanity progresses generation after generation, leading to existence itself. This means that this accumulation advances in an existential manner, solidifying a nation's presence in building both urban and man development. For this reason, civilization cannot be based on urban development alone without also developing man.
No doubt.
Likewise, civilization cannot be built on man development alone without also developing urban structures.
Right.
It has two aspects. The first is cumulative existential progress in man development, and the second is cumulative existential progress in urban development. Therefore, Doctor, we say that nations are of two types: existing nations and present nations. Existing nations are those that occupy a geographical space on this earth, but have no real presence or influence in the lives of the surrounding nations.
They have no lasting impact.
It has no testimony, presence, or connection with the surrounding nations. Instead, it is a nation isolated within itself. Such a nation exists in this world, but it has no extension, no civilizational model. On the other hand, present or civilizational nations are those that not only exist, but have firmly established their presence in a way that gives them influence and continuity in the lives of other nations. Other nations are affected by them and gain from their experiences. As for the fundamentals of civilizational development, Doctor, they consist of 5 key components or pillars. The first pillar is religion, as stated by Malik Benabi in his book The Conditions of the Renaissance and in many other works. A large number of Muslim scholars, as well as some Western scholars, have affirmed that religion is the primary pillar of civilization. However, some Western scholars, in their concept of civilization, replaced religion with race, claiming that only the white race is capable of building civilization. Others have replaced religion with the environment, i.e., the environment is prepared to create a civilization.
A civilization.
Because there are some environments where, no matter how much we try, progress cannot be achieved. However, let us say that there is a broad consensus that religion is one of the fundamental pillars of civilizational development, despite differences in opinions. The second pillar is man, as he is the central axis of civilization. He is the driving force, the will, and the active agent in building civilization. Man's mind, thoughts, and will are what build civilizations.
There is no doubt.
The third pillar, Doctor, is the spiritual and intellectual aspect of human life, which is reflected in a person's culture, way of life, thoughts, interactions, and attitude toward others. If this aspect is refined and advanced, it contributes to the development of a civilized individual.
Good.
The fourth pillar is the material aspect, which includes all forms of material progress in human life, such as advancements in living standards, communication, transportation, technology, education, urban development, medicine, harnessing natural resources, and mineral extraction. There must be a connection between this material progress and humans for civilization to be built, the fifth pillar. Doctor, the civilizational model, every nation has to build its own civilizational model that is represented in the systems they have chosen for life, such as the political system, the economic system, and the social system.
The social system, yes.
Likewise, the rest of the systems we live through. Within the question, Dr. Any nation can't make any civilizational development unless it accomplishes the 5 pillars and moves from the concept of the state to the concept
Of the nation.
of the nation. It's difficult for the state alone to establish a civilization unless it moves to the concept of a nation. For this reason, when was the Islamic nation able to build a civilization? It was when it moved beyond the concept of a state to embrace the concept of a nation.
Right, it means the first stage, the first century, was the century of the spread of Islam. The second century was the century of translations. The third century was a whole century of other sciences. And the fourth century was the century of Islamic civilization.
Yes.
Therefore, Adamez states that the fourth century was undoubtedly the century of Islamic civilization.
Yes, right.
Okay, doctor. What is the impact of religion on constructing
Yes,
civilizations?
the impact of religion.
You mentioned that these days, religion is considered a fundamental element in the pillars of civilization.
There are differences and varying opinions.
Go ahead.
However, religion is a fundamental influence in building civilization. Doctor, religion can either have a positive impact on civilization or a highly negative one, becoming a cause for its downfall, just like the ancient civilizations mentioned in the Holy Quran. If a religion possesses civilizational foundations, aligns with man's nature and higher values, and provides systems capable of establishing a civilized human life, then it becomes one of the greatest factors positively influencing civilization building. In fact, it drives a nation toward building a flourishing civilization.
Great.
If the religion has contradicted pillars with man's instinct, inhuman pillars, conflicting values, or racist values, it contains a kind of exclusivity.
And animosity.
A kind of animosity and contempt for others, then such a religion would become a factor in the collapse of civilization if a nation were to build its civilization upon it.
Practically, Doctor, there is no other religion but Islam that has built a civilization on a religious basis. As far as I know, Islam is the only religion that has done so. For example, did Judaism build a civilization on a religious basis? And this is, of course, the question. Does Judaism contain the elements necessary for civilizational development? Or have the Jews ever managed to build a civilization throughout history, Doctor?
Yes, Doctor. The quick answer is that the Jews have never, at any point in their long history, been able to build a Jewish civilization, or even a secular one. Gustave Le Bon wrote a book titled The Jews in the History of Ancient Civilizations. Will Durant dedicate a volume in the story of civilization to discussing the Jews in ancient civilizations? In his important book, Gustave Le Bon states that the Jewish contribution to civilization is zero.
Gustave Le Bon?
Yes.
Good.
He says at the beginning of this book states that the Jewish contribution to civilization is zero.
So what is his reasoning, Doctor?
Why? What is the reason? Of course, this book revolves around these explanations. It also states that throughout their long history and the historical transformations they experienced, the Jews were never able to develop what could be called Jewish arts, Jewish architecture, or Jewish literature. They could not establish a distinctly Jewish way of life for several reasons. The first reason is the Jewish belief, Doctor, a closed, exclusive belief system,
Racial.
which always makes the Jew live in a physical ghetto, isolating himself in a confined space. He finds himself emotionally and culturally detached, unable to interact or connect with others. As a result, he remains in a state of mere existence, but fails to transition into active presence within the lives of other nations.
Good.
Thus, Gustave Le Bon states that throughout history, the Jews haven't influenced any nation in any way whatsoever, and their impact on civilizations is essentially zero. However, the influence of the nations surrounding them on the Jewish people has been nearly 100%.
All right, Doctor. We will continue our discussion after a short break. Dear viewers, we will take a short break and return to continue this discussion on religions and their impact on civilizational development. Stay with us. Dear viewers, we are back to resume the remainder of our episode. Doctor, before the break, we discussed the foundations of civilizational development in Judaism and whether the Jews were able to build a civilization throughout history. You were elaborating on this topic and mentioned what Gustave Le Bon stated, that their contribution to civilization is essentially zero.
Right.
We would like to continue this discussion. Do you have any additional insights on this topic?
Yes. Gustave Le Bon also states in this book, Doctor, that Jewish history, referring to the Torah and the Old Testament along with its appendices, doesn't document history in a way that reflects a civilized society. Instead, it narrates events as if chronicling the history of a barbaric and brutal group whose relationship with other nations is purely conflict-based. He argues that the Torah does not record any civilizational values at all, but rather it focuses on values centered around conflict with others. Additionally, in another book of his titled The Civilization of the Arabs, he draws a connection to his book The Jews in the History of Early Civilizations and asserts that comparing pre-Islamic Arabs to the Jews would be an insult to the Arabs.
To this extent,
he explicitly says, this is considered an insult to the Arabs because even in their pre-Islamic era, they were characterized by chivalry,
bravery,
had
generous,
manliness, bravery, and generosity. They possessed qualities that could qualify them. For this reason, when Islam came to them, they were quickly able to build a civilization. However, the Jews are characterized by traits that cannot qualify a people to build a civilization, such as cowardice, deceit, treachery, and the qualities described in the Quran regarding the Jews. This extends even to their aggression in warfare, numerous other matters, and their worldview. These issues have indeed prevented the Jews from
establishing a civilization.
Besides that, their worldview is eschatological. That is why, as we mentioned in previous episodes, the Jewish synagogue's prayer is directed toward Jerusalem or the West. Why the West? Because they don't view life from its inception or focus on the present. Rather, they look towards the end, the ultimate outcome, and world domination. They live everywhere in a state of existential alienation, always seeing their presence as temporary. That is why their Qibla is always directed westward, as they don't focus on the present moment, but rather on the day they will dominate these
and rule
nations.
over them.
Moreover, Doctor, both Gustave Le Bon and Will Durant, in the section he dedicated to the Jews in the story of civilization and in the history of ancient civilizations, agreed that the Jews were influenced by the worst aspects of the nations they lived among, including their professions. In European eras, they engaged in low-status occupations, even those considered socially inferior, such as shoemaking, shoe repair, tailoring certain items, alcohol production, prostitution, and usury, professions that were even looked down upon by European society during the Middle Ages.
Found it repulsive.
That's why he says that even these industries, agriculture and manufacturing, were learned from other nations and were not their own innovations. Because of this, Gustave Le Bon and Will Durant both concluded that their contribution to civilization was negligible.
Zero. Good.
They were unable to offer anything to nations or peoples. Additionally, their stance on knowledge is weak and negative. You will not find a single text in the Torah that encourages the pursuit of knowledge. Some texts may promote wisdom, but their overall attitude towards science is very limited. The only knowledge considered valuable among Jews is religious knowledge, the study of the Torah and the Talmud.
That is, the only recognized knowledge is religious knowledge.
Yes, religious knowledge. For this reason, there is a very intense and heated conflict between Jewish religious and fundamentalist movements and secular movements regarding their stance on knowledge. Religious Jews forbid their children from learning anything other than religious studies, believing it to be forbidden. When did Jews begin embracing education? It was during the European Renaissance in the 18th century when Moses Mendelssohn initiated the Jewish Enlightenment movement, known as Haskalah. He managed to bring some young Jews out of the ghetto, freeing them from the psychological isolation they lived in, and enabling them to exercise their rights to citizenship and education. After that, they started turning toward empirical sciences. Later, they were compelled to do so when establishing the State of Israel.
Well, Doctor, briefly speaking, can we say that Christianity contains the components of civilization building? Or have Christians throughout history been able to build a civilization based on the values of the Christian religion?
Yes. Anyone who examines the Old Testament, which includes the Gospels and their supplements, will notice that civilizational values are also significantly absent. These books focus primarily on the nature of Christ and the moral and spiritual reform of individuals rather than material life. In other words, Doctor, they did not concern themselves with the concept of urban development or civilization building at all. Instead, they emphasized inner reform, which is why they prohibited wealth, condemned material prosperity, and discouraged people from engaging with worldly affairs. They failed to balance the inner and outer needs of human beings. However, let me say that the influence of Christianity on European societies during the Middle Ages was catastrophic, a well-documented fact widely discussed in historical literature.
Right.
when the church managed to take control. For 10 centuries over the European peoples, it eradicated the concept of civilization from their lives and was a fundamental cause of the severe backwardness in the Christian nations of Europe. It is well known how the church treated these peoples, prohibiting them from accessing science and even banning the Holy Scriptures from them.
And fought against scientists.
The church persecuted scientists and even burned some at the gates of cities. When did Christian societies begin to rise? After the Renaissance, when they freed themselves from the authority of the church and from religion itself. This led to a strong and negative reaction against religion, especially among European nations during their era of civilizational advancement. It was as if they had concluded that their progress was fundamentally tied to breaking free from the church and religion. This is because the church, even after the Renaissance, failed to reconcile religion with science.
And this explains secularism, Doctor.
Religion and civilizational progress. For this reason, Christian societies became more distant from religion and embraced secularism more strongly, separating religion from life, as they believed that religion was one of the causes of civilizational backwardness.
If we now wish to discuss Islam, what is Islam's impact on civilizational development? And how were Muslims able to establish an Islamic civilization in light of Allah's words? And thus we have made you a just community, that you will be witnesses over the people and the messenger will be a witness over you.
The evidence of Islamic civilizational development is more present in reality than in books. And let me say, Doctor, that the only nation that was able to build a civilization on true religious foundations, not merely material, worldly, or secular foundations, is the Islamic nation. And the Islamic nation, or rather Islam itself, is the only religion whose history hasn't caused crises for humanity. The Jews have caused multiple crises throughout history. The Christian nation and Christianity itself caused crises within Christian history and among other nations and peoples. When Islam emerged and built a strong civilization, it did not do so to dominate nations, oppress them, or force them to convert to Islam, but rather to guide them and free them from worshiping creation to worshiping the Creator. Why was Islam able to be the spark that ignited and illuminated the concept of civilization in the lives of Muslims? Because Islam balances both the material and spiritual aspects of life. And Islam considered the natural harmony with human nature. One of the reasons why Christianity was unable to build a truly Christian civilization in the Christian sense is that Western civilization today has adopted values different from those of the Christian religion.
Correct.
But Islamic civilization adopted the values of Islam because they align with human nature, the concept of development, and both material and spiritual progress. Islam emphasized human advancement and the cultivation of life. It did not direct individuals to live in seclusion as mere worshippers without engaging in work.
Right.
And without engaging with life. For this reason, Islam's stance on science is truly exceptional compared to Judaism and Christianity. Even Christianity has a very weak stance on science, and Judaism's stance is also very weak.
Weaker?
But Islam and the Quran navigated between religious knowledge and experimental science, as well as the knowledge of the forces of this universe and what exists in nature in a balanced and parallel manner.
That's true, Doctor. In fact, when one reads the verses of the Quran, they will find that the verses about knowledge in the Quran amount to nearly 1,000. Say, travel through the land and observe how creation began.
Yes.
The first verse revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, was, recite in the name of your Lord who created. Then there is the oath by the tools of writing, none, by the pen and what they inscribe. Thus in reality Islam has given great importance to knowledge. Are those who know equal to those who don't know?
Indeed, it never contradicted science at all, nor did it restrict knowledge in human life to religious knowledge alone. Rather, it balanced between religious and worldly knowledge. I will conclude, Doctor, by answering the second part of your question.
In a minute,
Allah the Almighty said, "And thus we have made you a just community, that you will be witnesses over the people, and the messenger will be a witness over you." Some scholars and interpreters explain that the Islamic nation will bear witness over other nations regarding their faith or lack thereof. Now, if this nation is to bear witness over other nations, can it do so based on the unseen?
no, of course.
Well, what does testimony mean for the Islamic nation? Testimony for the Islamic nation means civilization.
Cultural affairs,
That is, this Islamic nation must transition from merely existing
to a state of civilization.
to a state of civilization, just as the Prophet, peace be upon him. It is as if Allah is saying this. And thus we have made you a just nation, meaning a moderate nation, not in a geographical sense, but in a moral and material sense, embodying all aspects of balance and moderation in the lives of all these nations and peoples, so that you may be witnesses over mankind. This means being engaged, interacting, and coexisting with these people, being a means of their guidance while also transitioning from a mere state of existence. A Muslim shouldn't live in a state of mere existence.
He must leave a mark.
He must transition to a state of civilization and presence in the lives of others, just as the Prophet Mohammed, peace be upon him, was not merely a prophet existing in the lives of Muslims, but was actively present in their lives, leaving no aspect of their lives untouched.
Without clarifying and explaining it,
Except that he clarified and implemented Allah's command regarding it. For this reason, some scholars have stated that while nations and peoples can build civilizations, the concept of civilization itself is neutral. However, Islamic civilization is the only true civilization that can endure and align with human nature and values. Why? Because it is the only civilization built on religious foundations, and its religious principles are in complete harmony with human values, natural disposition, scientific progress, and human needs. For this reason, Muslims excelled in various arts, literature, and sciences. We can discuss Islamic art, literature, poetry, and science. However, we cannot speak in the same way about Jewish literature, art, or poetry.
you reminded me, Doctor, of what Iqbal said, and I will conclude with it. When he visited Andalusia and saw the Islamic monuments and civilization, he said, "This is the greatest open-air museum of Islamic civilization. When you visit Toledo, Seville, and these regions, you truly stand in awe. Today, a significant part of Spain's economy relies on tourism, much of which is driven by Islamic civilization."
For this reason, Dr. Mohammed, Gustave Le Bon, in his book Civilization of the Arabs, said, "I wish that the Arabs had been able to dominate the nations of the world."
Thus, dear viewers, as we conclude this episode, we extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. Alaa Hailat. From the discussions presented in this program, we conclude that a human being's engagement with religion, concern for it, and submission to it stem from the fact that religion provides what no institution, ideology, or theory has been able to fulfill. Therefore, religion is a necessity in man's life, standing at the pinnacle of essential needs. One of the most significant roles of religion is fulfilling a person's spiritual needs and satisfying their inner longings. Through religion, souls are elevated, spirits are refined, and emotions are purified. It enables a person to comprehend life's philosophy and its value. Religion provides comforting answers to all the questions that occupy a person's mind regarding life, their role in it, their origin, and their ultimate destiny after death. This, in turn, brings peace and stability to the individual, allowing them to reconcile with existence and feel a sense of harmony. Religion is not merely a set of burdensome obligations that weigh a person down with hardship and difficulty. Rather, it is nourishment for the soul, fulfillment for the heart, and satisfaction for the conscience, something no one can do without, just as they cannot do without food, drink, and other necessities. Religion's ability to fulfill these innate human needs stems from its very essence, its doctrines and teachings, and its connection to divine revelation, truth, man's nature, and supreme values. Religion either enriches a person's life, grounding them in this world in a positive and refined manner, or it can strip away human values and lead to misery in both this life and the hereafter. The study of religion transcends geographical and human boundaries, but it must always be a sincere pursuit of truth. With that, dear viewers, we have reached the end of our program, People and Religions. We hope that it has met your expectations and been of benefit to you. Until we meet again with new topics, Allah willing, we leave you in His care and protection. Thank you for watching. Peace and blessings be upon you.
We will go beyond the geographical and cultural boundaries to explore how religions influence human lives and how humans in turn shape their spiritual experiences.